Thank you, Jeff. And my special thanks to the signer, and my apologies to her for the fact that I always rewrite my speeches 11 times after I hand them in. I want to begin by extending my most heartfelt gratitude to Elon's faculty and administration for the honor and opportunity to speak with you. It is not every day that an American Jew who leads a Jewish organization in New York is invited to deliver a baccalaureate speech at a distinguished North Carolina university with proud United Church of Christ origins. So, I am truly delighted to be here, and will try to use this time to frame the ways in which we should all be doing more to work for justice in the world. First, though, let me say that I am honored with all of you to be celebrating these extraordinary soon-to-be graduates. Graduating from an institution that has a rich intellectual heritage and a steadfast commitment to diversity, an institution ranking ever higher in the pantheon of American universities for its commitment to its students and their future. And my congratulations today, as Jan said earlier, go not only to the graduates, but also to all of the parents, grandparents, family, partners, and friends who helped the graduates reach this momentous day. Families, as your hearts swell with pride, let me remind you that these young people are now adults. They are the adults of the 21st century, the leaders for our present and our future. And yes, they are without the benefit of your years of experience. But that is the thing about experience. No one can have it or create it for anyone else. These graduates must create their own experiences, and we must support them. I've been through this several times. And we must support them, even encourage them to make their own choices, take their own risks, and make their own mistakes. And now a word to the graduates. You came to Elon with varying backgrounds, and I am sure that no matter how much you have influenced each other, you will leave with significant differences between and among you. That is all to the good. You are graduating from a university that has provided you with opportunities that are incomprehensible to most people around the world. Your courses, your professors, your relationships, and yes, even your parties are an enormous privilege. Even in your moments of doubt and struggle, even when you crammed for final exams, I hope you remembered then and will remember going forward that your education is a powerful instrument of change for yourself and for our global community. And that Elon, with its intentionality about service, about global travel, about civic engagement, and about multicultural experiences, is making a particular effort to prepare you to make more change in the future. And for sure, slightly beyond my understanding, although I have grandchildren that I learn from, the world has evolved a lot during your 4 years of college. iPads and Kindles replaced textbooks and magazines. Spotify, I only know about this from my granddaughter, eclipsed iTunes. Hulu eclipsed Netflix, and many of you probably feel like you majored in Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr. And I hope that you invested in Facebook, because apparently those people are going to be billionaires by next week. More seriously, global politics have changed dramatically too. In the last 4 years, an earthquake ravaged Haiti, the worst famine in 60 years broke out in East Africa, Osama bin Laden was killed, the Arab Spring took hold of North Africa, the Occupy movement was born in the United States, and just last week, President Obama, elected during your freshman year as our nation's first black president, which was an extraordinary historical event itself, became the first president in American history to announce his support for same-sex marriage. I would be remiss to speak of Obama's announcement without acknowledging its significance for people in North Carolina. As you know, Obama's support for same-sex marriage came on the heels of Amendment 1, a senseless setback to realizing our nation's promise of liberty and justice for all. But even a setback can have unexpected benefits. It is a true mark of progress around the world wherever you stand on this issue, that people in North Carolina of all different stripes and colors, gay, straight, black, white, Hispanic, wealthy, middle, and working class, built a unified coalition to fight for each other's liberation. They did not defeat the amendment, but they did build alliances for future change. And we are living in a time of radical, turbulent transformation, politically, morally, economically, and technologically. It is a time both of unparalleled innovation and paralyzing polarity. All of us, graduates, family, faculty, deans, administration, all of us are trying to make sense of it, trying to navigate this beautiful, painful, messy world with clarity of vision and a grounded sense of purpose. The fact that more than 70% of you traveled abroad during your time in school may have helped sensitize you to what is happening in the world. Our planet is plagued by extreme poverty and obscene wealth. We live in a world in which the 500 richest people earn more than the 416 million poorest. A world in which politicians, entrepreneurs, and religious leaders are sadly often more concerned with their own power and reputation than with doing what is fair and just. And in the last couple of years, also during your time at Elon, these inequities have been exacerbated by the global recession. There are people that many of you may know, people probably here today, who have suffered unemployment and the loss of health coverage and retirement savings. For many of you, very sadly, it will be harder to find jobs than it should be. And sadly, many of you will need to pay off substantial student loans, which is an absurd burden for a wealthy country to impose on its future. The United States is in dire need of debt relief policies to alleviate the financial burdens of students, and I think you should be proud that Elon is leading the way in tackling these problems. I salute them for that effort. But no matter what these economic problems that may be sitting on your desk or your shoulder or in your checkbook, I want you to remember that money is not everything. It is only a tool. Our values, principles, and integrity contain the essence of who we are. Values, principles, integrity, that is the stuff that matters. It is what builds the fabric of society. And it often stems from religion, even though it is not popular today to credit religion with anything good. This is regrettably a time when religious discourse is much too dominated by divisiveness and exclusion, when hate crimes are committed in the name of religious values, and when the media relentlessly depicts Christians, Muslims, and Jews as volatile enemies. It is too easy today to lose sight of the good that religion offers us. But even though some religious leaders have led us astray, the root of our traditions, the desire to bring holiness into the world, the imperative, as Jeff mentioned, to mend what is broken, remains firmly intact. Mending what is broken is at the core of my own religious practice. It is the reason why I do the work that I do. When I was growing up, my mother worked at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, an institution that trains rabbis, and I had the unbelievable opportunity to spend time with a man named Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, a faculty member regarded then and now as one of modern Judaism's most influential thinkers. For those of you who have never heard of Rabbi Heschel, you probably, if you're old enough, once saw his picture because he marched arm in arm with Dr. King from Selma to Montgomery to protest racial segregation in the American South. One time, at a civil rights march, a reporter pulled Heschel aside and asked why he wasn't praying. Heschel replied, "I am. I'm praying with my feet." By pursuing social justice, Heschel believed, we can encounter the divine. We can understand in the deepest recesses of our souls what it means to be alive, why God put us on earth, what is our value to humanity. We may not ever be able to understand why society permits inequality, intolerance, hunger, disease, and genocide in the first place. But we can understand what we can do to stop them. We can discover and define our different faiths by putting them into action. It was not easy for Heschel, King, or any activists during the civil rights movement to stretch their arms across gulfs of difference to do the brave work that they did together. In case you need me to tell you this, which I doubt, building coalitions across lines of race, class, and religion is hard work. But here's the secret. Coalition work and pluralism are about learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I'll say it again. Pluralism is about learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. As you continue to chart your course, both professionally and personally, never allow yourself to get too comfortable. Make sure you experience some discomfort. Make sure you felt what it's like to be an outsider, to be a stranger, to be on the margins. These experiences will make you a stronger leader. They will make you a better person. Two short anecdotes. My first exposure to this, as you've said accurately, this Jew from New York, was to find myself working in rural western Oklahoma when I was not more than 2 years older than the graduates. And my job was to find foster homes. And I knew nothing about how to proceed, but I had done a little bit of community organizing. And so I walked through the community I lived in, which had 11,000 people. That's a few less than New York. And I discovered that on almost every block, there was a church that did not look like what I knew to be a church. It was a church in a pastor's home with a time announced for the public to gather. And crossing a lot of gulfs of difference, I went to those pastors and told them I needed foster homes. And every single one of them invited me to his evening service. And at some point after the prayers, the pastor said, I want to introduce you to a woman who is here on behalf of the neediest children in our county. We need to provide her 4 foster homes. Friends, nobody ever did their job faster than I, and it was not my doing, it was their doing. That's when I first learned about crossing these bridges. And then much more recently, in fact, last week, I read an article about a Muslim sheikh in New York. He is providing space in his storefront mosque for elderly Orthodox Jews to pray together because there's no longer a synagogue in their community. Despite considerable opposition from people in his own Muslim community, he pushed himself to be open, to think differently, and to act generously. He wrote, unfortunately, we can become so selfish, so unmindful of our neighbors, to the point where we don't know anything about them. We rarely pay attention to who they are and what their needs are. So those stories have a purpose. As you build your own communities, I urge you to think as expansively as possible about what building community means. Of course, surround yourself with those who share your interests, but do not be afraid to reach across lines of difference. If you unlearn some of the social prescriptions that dictate whom to love and whom to fear, and what to think, you may be surprised to find friends, allies, and partners in unexpected places. I want to urge the graduates to do something else. Now I'm going to get in trouble with the families. Make trouble. Good trouble, messy trouble, constructive trouble. Go ahead, stir up commotion, rouse some rabble. It's a healthy thing to do. But do remember this, making trouble is not always about taking your place on the battle lines. Sometimes it's about voicing an unpopular belief. Sometimes it's about being unafraid to be your own unbridled, authentic self. Sometimes it's about knowing when to break the rules. Laurel Thatcher Ulrich is an American historian and a practicing Mormon who once wrote, "Well-behaved women seldom make history." The truth is, well-behaved people seldom make history, no matter your gender. So be a little gutsy sometimes. Have some chutzpah. It's a good thing to have. And for those of you who are Jewish, you probably know that chutzpah is a cultural expectation. We often speak of our political and social realities. We all do this. I do this too. In terms of those who are progressive and those who are regressive, those from red states and those from blue states, people who are religious and people who are secular, people who are worthy of recognition and people who deserve no attention at all, people who get to make decisions and people who must sit on the sidelines. We have to come to recognize that these old paradigms have become our prisons. They have paralyzed our imaginations and prevented us from thinking beyond these self-serving categories of righteousness and villainy. They have prevented us from transcending the notion of us versus them. Please do not fall into the trap of being reductive. States are not one color or the other. People are not one-dimensional. We have been taught too much about how to stigmatize and pigeonhole, and not nearly enough about how to deal with a world that is nuanced and complex. So, come into your power in new and imaginative ways. Recognize the inherent dignity of all individuals, whether you agree with them or not. If we do not redraw this picture, we will continue to color within the boundaries set by others. And we will wake up one day and realize we have painted terrible visions for ourselves and for those for whom we are responsible. Now, making trouble can often seem hopeless, but the words of renowned poet, author, and activist Audre Lorde provide both guidance and strength. She said, "Your silences will not protect you." She wrote, "If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive." Within each of you is the power to reconstruct and build a new paradigm, to challenge society by challenging and changing yourselves. Elon, as we heard from the students, has given you some of the tools to do this. The school's motto, "Engaged minds, inspired leaders, global citizens," is a collective vision not only for all of you as graduates, but for the entire world. So take risks. Be bold, courageous, and strong. Remember, you are what you do, not what you think, or what you want, or what you dream. You are what you do. I quoted Rabbi Heschel to you before. In one of his final interviews, he was asked what advice he had for young people. And he said, "Let them be sure that every deed counts, that every word has power, and that we all can do our share to redeem the world, in spite of all absurdities and all frustrations and all disappointments. And above all, let them remember to build a life as if it were a work of art." So I'm hoping that regardless of what you're doing next, whether it's in graduate school or on travels or at a job site or as a voter or just as an individual, that you will find ways to engage in the holy effort of solving humanity's biggest problems. We live in a country, the richest country in the world, in which the assumption is that by the end of this year, 17 million children will have fallen below the poverty line. And globally, children of every race and nationality have the same problems, but of an almost unimaginably larger magnitude. There are 16,000 children a day, yes, 16,000 children a day, who lose their lives to an abject poverty, which is both a cause and an effect of hunger and disease. There's no easy way for me to say that, and no easy way for you to hear it. But I want you to hear it and to act on it. And above all, I want to ask you, do not retreat to the convenience of being overwhelmed. It's much too easy to hear a number and say, it's too big for me. There is work for every single one of us to do, and those children of today's world need our commitment if we are not going to lose more of them to inequity and injustice. So I've given you a lot of advice. Don't do this work by yourself. Get involved, exercise your power to mobilize, organize, and convince others. Build a community of activists. Convey a sense of hope and possibility to everyone with whom you work, and don't be afraid to build coalitions across lines of race, faith, and class. And be sure to undertake these efforts with a mixture of patience, of hope, and of fun. It's complex, it's slow to get from A to B, but the rewards will be great. And you can only do it if you sustain hope, which is the ingredient that keeps us doing when we might otherwise quit. And don't forget the fun. If we want joy and friendship and laughter at the end of the struggle, then we must have them along the way. So that is what I wish for all of you and for all of us. Hone your political will, wrestle with your faith, and sharpen your moral compass. Act with integrity, engage in reflection, ask hard questions, and allow yourself to change your mind. Live with your values. Recognize that we honor our faiths when we help those in need, when we work with them for greater justice in their lives. Use the affluence and influence of our own communities on behalf of everyone. There is a famous Jewish commentary which states that it is not our obligation to complete the work, but we cannot refuse to participate. A similar thought was articulated centuries later by Archbishop Romero, the priest who worked to protect the peasants of El Salvador, and I would like to close with his words. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. This is what we are about. We plant seeds that one day will grow. We water the seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference. We are prophets of a future, not our own. Thank you and congratulations.